Yeah, you're out.
Janko sat down with Bobby Lee, and as expected, this conversation ends up going in the direction of faith, religion, and Jesus. We're going to take a look at a quick clip here. It's not too long towards the end of the video where they get into this conversation about heaven.
It was an amazing part of the.
But what's the point that you told me the story?
My point
that there's
is
like some.
the reason why you were sober is because you believed God is going to help you, and He did. You believed it. So right now you.
But according to you, even with my belief in God, I'm not going to heaven.
Why?
So right off the bat, right, Bobby starts off with something that's tough. According to you, even with my belief in God, I'm not going to heaven. The question that would have been helpful to ask here is, who is God? We can all be wrong about this, but we can't all be right. I think a good follow-up here would be, has this God revealed himself to us? And if so, how has this God revealed himself? This is something we all have to think about. And this is what I think sets Christianity apart. That God has indeed revealed himself to us.
Because Jesus Christ isn't my Lord and Savior.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah, you're out.
Wow. I mean, I appreciate how honest and direct Bobby is here, right? He says, Jesus Christ isn't my Lord and Savior. No beating around the bush, just straight up in his answer. It's tough to have conversations with people about Jesus when they want to both accept and reject him. So I appreciate how honest and clear Bobby is here. These people, they want to accept what he offers, but reject what he commands. That doesn't work. The question now becomes, why isn't Jesus your Lord and Savior? I think that's a good follow-up here. Is it because the gospel hasn't been presented to you in a way that makes sense to you? Is the Jesus that has been presented to you a caricature of the biblical Jesus? What do you think about Jesus? The vast majority accept that Jesus was a great teacher, so it's important to understand other people's starting point. When you engage in these conversations with people, oftentimes what you find is that what they're rejecting isn't really Jesus at all. What they're rejecting isn't really the gospel at all. It's this caricature. It's not the real, it's not the true thing. So it's important to ask these questions to get clarity. Because if they're rejecting something that's false, then hey, that's okay. Let me not present it to you in the right way. Let me not present it to you as in the truth that it really is. And George responds, right? George's response is tough, and we shouldn't just skip over it. He says, yeah, you're out.
Yeah.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah, you're out.
Which is insane.
Which is insane.
It's so insane. We'll talk about it some other time.
Yeah, it's a hard pill to swallow.
It's not a pill that I will ever swallow. It doesn't even exist.
Yeah, fair enough.
Okay.
Are you mad?
No, what I'm saying though is that, I mean, you know.
Like if this was our house, right? Me and you lived here, we're roommates. And some dude banged on our door and he's like, yo, I heard you're having a party. And we don't know who this man is. Are you going to let him in?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, how long does this podcast go?
I mean, it takes a lot of courage for George to tell him, yeah, you're out. And then Bobby's at least response is, I guess, somewhat expected, right? And he says, which is insane. It's not a pill that I will ever swallow. It doesn't even exist. I do think that George's analogy of allowing a guy into a party at his house is good. I think a few verses come to mind for me when this particular analogy that George uses. In the gospel, Jesus tells people who are claiming to be his followers, depart from me, I never knew you. Now, in this context, it's talking more about those who make false professions, but I think the principle applies, considering the whole allowing people into the party. Also, the parable where Jesus is talking about the sheep and goats. Like George said, it's not easy to hear, but it needs to be said. Now, again, I would emphasize the courage that George shows by telling him this and not softening the blow. Like he was very direct, very kind of, hey, this is what it is. I think sometimes in our efforts to be gentle and just so we're clear, right? We have to be gentle. But sometimes we get so caught up in not trying to offend that we present the truth in a way that gives people a way out. It defeats the purpose if that's the way you're presenting it. We got to present it the way that it's there. We can't soften the blow in that sense. We're trying to make it less offensive. The gospel is offensive. There's no way around it. Now we shouldn't make it more offensive. We have to present it the way it is. this is a hard truth, right? The gospel is a hard truth, and it's something people have to wrestle with. For those of us who are Christians now, for those of us who are believers, we all had that point where we had to wrestle with: am I gonna follow the truth, follow God's truth, or am I gonna follow what I think is best, what I want to do, even though it maybe at the time you don't realize it, but it's harming yourself, it's harming the people around you. It's a hard truth, right? And it carries eternal implications. When you consider who Jesus claims to be, it becomes less insane to accept him as Lord and Savior. He doesn't just claim to be the way, the truth, and the life. He demonstrates this by rising from the dead. Again, this is what sets Christianity apart. Like Cliff says in his conversation with Logan Paul, if someone dies and comes back from the dead, we should listen to what he has to say. Now, in Bobby Leach's response, I think what we hear is more of an emotional resistance and not so much of an intellectual resistance. And if that is the case, as it is with most people, then this is where showing all the good Christianity has done for the world is helpful. Now, he says it doesn't even exist, but just in case he's talking about Jesus not existing, as in he is saying it doesn't exist like Jesus doesn't exist, there are no scholars who agree with the statement that Jesus doesn't exist. There's Jesus mythicism. There are no scholars in the field, no believer, non-believer, who agree with this statement. Bart Ehrman, perhaps the leading agnostic, skeptic, New Testament scholar, has said this over and over again, that the person of Jesus Christ existed in history. That's almost like not almost, that is a certain fact. This conversation was good. Honestly, this is something I expected personally. I mean, considering how they kind of ended the podcast with Logan Paul, it was about a year ago now. I didn't think that this would happen. And kudos to Bobby Lee for, one, coming on George's platform. It takes courage on his part. It takes courage on George's part to have him on. But also takes a lot of courage for Bobby Lee to come on and then apologize. He doesn't wait. He apologizes right away. That's awesome. Kudos to Bobby for doing that. I think also this models for us as Christians, as believers, this sense of forgiveness, right? I mean, if you saw the clip and you heard some of the back and forth, what happened on that podcast, man, that's tough. For us as guys, that's something that's, I'm being honest here, that's tough to forgive. So kudos for George for being willing and able to do that and showing us and demonstrating to us what it looks like to forgive in real time. Well, thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you next time.